Hey guys, welcome back! Robocraft Early Access coverage! This is episode 77, I'm Enigmius, and today we're finishing the Manta, our tier 10 SMG helicopter. It's one of these projects that just kind of, we've been doing a lot of testing with rotor blades and various different things, trying to make them work. And I wanted to build something with them because that would justify all that time spent testing them and learning how that they work. So that's what we did. It's a very large bot. It's kind of like a pancake. It's very, very flat. It's got a smooth underside with the exception of the little bumps where we patched some of the holes that we made, spinning blocks around so that we could mount things on top. And now we're basically turning it from a great big pancake with a few rotor blades into something that can actually fight, which is a fairly straightforward process. It begins here building out a little bit around the pilot seat. One of the things I encountered with that is that it's very difficult to do because the rotor blades are all kind of surrounding it. So there's not a lot of space. And then I decided as I was building it out that I wanted to try some thrusters. And there's very few places. We can't put any thrusters on top really, except for this ludicrous setup that I've got here. Because again, the rotor blades are in the way. There's not much that we can do. So before we started messing around with other areas, I decided we'd give it a shot. And you can see they're just too high up. They flipped the bots as soon as they had a chance. So we didn't waste any time removing those. But we still have to keep in mind that we're going to have to build around the pilot seat in order to protect it from, stray weapons fire. You never know what you're going to encounter. Just because it's on top of the bot and the bot is theoretically supposed to be above anything that we're fighting doesn't mean that's always going to be the case. So we want to make sure that we aren't leaving it exposed unnecessarily. But again, understanding that our ability to build around it the way we normally would is kind of limited. So we're just kind of testing the waters to see what we can get away with. Some protection is better than none. That's basically what it boils down to. And then it came time with that done, and literally that was it. What you just saw for protecting the pilot seat. That's all the space that we had. But we got to get some guns on this thing. Now I decided to go with SMGs because we're gonna do the Panther B. We're gonna do the Panther B Mark II. It's not gonna involve rotor blades, I don't think. So we're free to use whatever weapons we feel like, and just because of the size of this thing, it made sense that we put SMGs on it. We can fit a lot of SMGs onto this thing without really feeling strapped for space. And because it's basically a flying vehicle, putting them underneath means they're going to be in a great position to fire on almost anything that we come across. Again, understanding that bombers can still fly higher than us. Well, any bot with wings could fly higher than us, but this is not a bad setup. 12 SMGs, tier 10 SMGs, which is not too bad at all. It's kind of like a flying gun bed now. Call it a gunship, whatever you want. And I still wanted to get some thrusters on because thrusters theoretically mean more speed. There might be some limiting factors. I remember reading that rotor blades create drag. So there might be, some restriction in terms of how much speed the thrusters will grant us. But it's still more than, what we would have had without thrusters at all. So that's kind of why we put them on, is every little bit helps theoretically. And they're the kind of thing that if people shoot them off, I'm not really too concerned about it because the vehicle can still function without them. We've already tested it. We know that the vehicle can get around. So these are just kind of icing on the cake. And then with all that hardware that we just added, we've exceeded the lift capacity of our rotor blades, which is not necessarily a bad thing. There's options that we have to correct this situation, but while we were here in the test map, I decided it might not be a bad idea to just kind of take a look and see what we can do. Bouncing off the terrain gives us a little bit of lift. Lots of guns, lots of thrusters, lots of rotor blades, and very little else on this bot. It's a very stripped down for action kind of setup. Not necessarily working the best when it's doing the little flipping around in circles kind of thing, and that got me thinking, the way that it does all this flipping around in circles, if there's not something that we could do to correct that doesn't involve just more thrusters pushing either way, because I did do some testing previously, and the thrusters used as a means of trying to control the rotation didn't seem to work too well. But the first thing that we have to resolve before we get onto anything else is we have to get more lift. And I originally said, okay, well, I've got some tier 5 rotors left. We could use those, but then I thought, I'm putting it above everything else. Why not use the tier 10? Then we were adding one rotor in basically the only place that we could add one with the way the chassis is currently laid out. Get the benefit of all that extra lift. It's almost to the point where it's redundant. Obviously we needed that little bit of extra lift because the bot wasn't responding too well, but it was just sort of on the cusp of not wanting to lift up at all. So this is a lot more lift than we needed just to get the bot in the air, but if we lose this, if we've also lost some other components, we can probably stay aloft with just the other 3. So it's kind of a trade-off. It wasn't absolutely necessary to put the big one on, but I just couldn't think of a reason not to. If the other option was a tier 5 or a tier 6, why not just go for the tier 10? Because there's nowhere else we're going to get one on there. So you can see it solved the problem of not being able to get airborne quite well. It's fairly well protected from underneath by the chassis. Like, there's not much hanging out over the edges. Of course, if we're tilted down or, in any direction, it won't necessarily be difficult for anyone to line up a shot on any of the rotors, but there's no such thing as perfect protection in this kind of scenario. We're just kind of doing the best we can with what we've got. And it seems to be working pretty well, but it still has the problem of wanting to rotate far too much. If it hits something, it just starts spinning around. If you turn aggressively and rotate around, it wants to keep rotating. Like this here is not bad. This is relatively slow, kind of passive turning. But when we come around and we want to stop turning, it doesn't necessarily behave as much as you might like it to. It's very, very easy to oversteer and very, very difficult to correct once you start kind of spinning out of control. So based on that, I decided that what we would do is we would try some rotor blades mounted vertically or horizontally, whatever, so that they're facing to the side instead of facing up and down, and see if that doesn't help us with the turning issue and the overcorrecting. You see how it just goes very, very wonky when you turn quickly and you want to kind of rebalance where you're going. So I decided we'd build an outrigger on the back, not dissimilar to a helicopter, and mount. In this case, I decided we might as well go with 2 tier 5 rotor blades, just because, one facing one way, one facing the other. Not necessarily because I thought it would be necessary, but because we had them and no harm in trying, I guess. What more can you say? So the first step, of course, is making sure that you can get them to fit on the bot and building out so that we have that option to mount them. We'll probably have to, we'll have to clear out a couple of blocks here on the chassis, which is not that big of a deal because they're not, integral to the success of the bot, I guess you could say. They're just there, and we can remove them to make room. And by the time we get everything sorted out, this is basically the gist of the whole kind of thing. And now it's just a matter of building out around them a little bit, making sure that the outrigger isn't something that's very, very easy to shoot off, but also understanding that, if it gets hit with anything like plasma fire or rail projectiles, whatever, it's gone. There's not much you can do with something this size to keep it on. And we are using the tier 5 rotors for this, so there's kind of a limit in terms of what we can expect, what we can reasonably expect before things just kind of stop working. Now, having done all that, having made all those changes, having, added the outrigger, added the rotor blades, realized we're going to hop into the practice map momentarily here, but realized that they don't do a damn thing for us. They aren't helpful at all. All it does, what I found is that it gave me this increased sense of confidence that I would be able to do really aggressive turning and rotating without losing control of the bot, and ended up completely losing control of the bot. So that's kind of the thing with these, is they're added for a purpose that we anticipated would work. There we go, colliding on things, and now we're trying to spin the other way. Doesn't work. It really takes a long time to correct when you get spinning in that direction, whether it's because you bounced off something or because you turned really aggressively. See, there we go. We're spinning and we're trying to correct. We're trying to go the other way. Not so good. So you might be thinking, well, all right, pull those off and try something else. And I thought, you know what? No, I'm going to leave those on because they're kind of a decoy. You know, someone on the ground looking for something to shoot that constitutes a weak spot on this bot might think that outrigger is a pretty tasty target, and we can completely do without it for the time being. More importantly, it reserved the CPU so that if I am finding that we're losing rotors and, you know, crashing our way to glory too early in matches, I can always pull those rotors off, redo the outrigger so that it's instead of 1 it's 2, and split farther apart, and put those 2 rotors on the back end just for a little bit of redundancy. They'll be vulnerable, easily shot off, but redundant nonetheless, and that's kind of the thing that we need to be doing from time to time. So now we're just going to do a little bit of detailing with Tetras, filling things in, adding a little extra armor, making them look a little bit more snazzy. Next episode will be match footage, either this or the new Pretty Hate Machine, because we still haven't done any match footage with the Pretty Hate Machine, and then whatever one we don't do in the next episode, we'll do in the episode after. And then we've got the Panther Bee that we're going to be rebuilding at some point, hopefully soon, and a beginner's guide to Robocraft tactics in matches. I promise, I'm working on it. It's just not a fast thing to make. So if you want to be notified when I add any of those videos, you can always subscribe to my channel. You can also follow me on social media. Links for that always in the information section below the video. Please leave your comments and feedback. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.